If you look at state media in different countries and even in the United States, a lot of media outlets that tend to follow certain opinion or take a certain stance. And it's really, really hard to distinguish what's real, what's fake these days. And you have to, make an effort to do that. Social networks, they are creating this like infinite loops to grab our attention. So sometimes we don't really see that we are becoming like a part of a certain opinion or a certain group, and it's just surrounding us everywhere we go. If I'm asked like, what are the things that to pay attention to, how to distinguish, misinformation and maybe potential fakes, I'm just super proud to be representing them. But the name's Starling Lab, and this is a research and development lab as a part of Stanford. That's how you preserve very important evidence of war crimes that are happening every day, unfortunately, because we want to make sure that people that are accountable for this, they actually get what they do. Yeah, they actually get what they deserve for the war crimes that they commit. And every time I talk to reporters as well, they always ask me like, who's the person behind this tech? How they came up with this idea, what's been on their mind, and what's the story that brought them to this point. It's always better to be honest about that, and I think that touches people a lot, and they can relate to it better because they can see that you're a real human as well, not some sort of AI. Because through PR, they can understand and learn more about breakthrough in tech or beyond, and this is something that is changing their lives today or will change in the future. And when you find your passion, and if you do it every day, like I feel like that's when you understand that this is it. You made it.
Hi, this is She Did It Show and the next season of 2023. I hope it will bring us all the best. All your goals and plans this year will come true. From my side, I will try to bring more meaningful conversations and more talented guests here. And I'm so happy to introduce you today our guest, Anastasia Golovina. Anastasia is an award-winning PR and communications manager focusing on Web3. Anastasia has a journalist background and more than 5 years of PR experience helping tech companies to tell their stories. Today, she works as a head of PR in Protocol Labs and curating Web3 decentralized projects. Previously, she was working at Ditto PR, where she worked with such brands as Ledger, Algorand, SingularityNet, and other amazing projects. Her work has been featured in industry outlets such as PR Week, PR News, Tech Times, CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Financial Times, and other media outlets. And she's the owner of Visa for Extraordinary Talents in the US.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Anastasia. Yeah,
Hi.
I'm so happy that we finally do this interview with you today.
Yes, likewise.
Yeah. So you have an amazing experience working in PR, as a journalist, and with web space. It's such a unique blend of so many interesting things.
Yeah.
And I would love to talk with you today about your background, about media. I mean, like today we are living in such a time when media is a fourth power, which influences people in so many ways, which creates some frames for political issues and influencing like in all many different ways our life today. Yeah, and you're having such an interesting background. You've been working as a journalist and as a political journalist in Russia, and then you switch to Web3 space. So it's just so interesting, and I'm sure we'll have an amazing conversation.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, talking about media, there are works happening in our time, and people sometimes just have misleading information in media. And I would love to talk about the manipulations in media which happens today and how people could prevent it, how they could recognize that. Maybe it will help just with that.
Yeah, I do think that, manipulation and disinformation is definitely one of the core problems of our society these days. Especially as you mentioned, with so many ongoing conflicts, it became a real issue. And when I started as a journalist, and even in school, I focused my research on studying manipulation and disinformation and all these different things. And that has been like one of the core areas of my research. And I was fascinated by propaganda and how it works and how it's being created, and how it can influence people's mind. And during my time in school, as a journalist, we do really focus a lot on learning how to distinguish facts and opinions, and how to ensure that when we communicate with people, when we write something, we rely on facts rather than opinions. However, what we see today is very different. Like if you look at state media in different countries and even in the United States, a lot of media outlets that tend to follow, a certain opinion or a certain take a certain stance, and many people just don't really take time to understand why this is happening and what information has been fed to them. And unfortunately, it's not their fault. It's not something that you can really blame them for, since the technology has become so sophisticated, especially with new AI tools. We have, things like deep fakes emerging. We have, different tools to manipulate images and photographs. So, we live in the society where you cannot trust anything, basically. And it's really, really hard to distinguish, what's real, what's fake these days. And you have to, make an effort to do that. And unfortunately, again, not only we don't take time, but we are social networks, they are creating this infinite loops to, grab our attention. So sometimes we don't really see that we are becoming a part of a certain opinion or a certain group, and it's just surrounding us everywhere we go. And if I'm asked what are the things that to pay attention to, how to distinguish, misinformation and maybe potential fakes, I think it's really important to start developing critical mindset in our days. And again, when I was at school, I remember when we were reading even textbooks and newspapers, our professors and teachers were asking us to read it line by line and ask ourselves is this fact or is it an opinion?
An opinion.
Yeah, and if it's an opinion, what side does it belong to, right? And for us, I think what's important is try to make sure that we read different sources and diversify the sources of information that we read every day and as much as we can. So if you read an article about a certain political event, or even just a simple event in our life, it's always better to look for other sources that can cover the same event but potentially from a different perspective. And the truth is always somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something that will help you. Don't try to put yourself in the echo chamber of the same sources that kind of follow your opinion, or the opinion that you prefer. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And try to break for that. And even if this is something that you disagree with, I think it's still better to diversify as much as you can.
Maybe there are some words or some techniques specifically you could mention which could help us to recognize this article is just trying to create our opinion in a specific direction. It doesn't give us lots of sources of information at the same article. It just brings such a bright expressions about some events which are an opinion, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, basically anything that can be counted as an opinion is something that you should be alarmed about in the first place. So, for example, if you read a sentence about a sort of meeting that took place somewhere, this is a fact, right? Because it took place, you see the photographs, you see the timestamp, you see other people that reported the same thing. But then if you read a sentence that says that this meeting was a terrible mistake, or a path to the future, or something else, this is an opinion of person that wrote about it. So this is where you have to pause and ask yourself, is it really the case? Or should I go to check the same thing in another source and maybe they will have a different opinion? So anything that has any sort of like characteristics like that should be an alarm call for you for sure.
Yeah, like in such bright words,
Especially, yes.
like Nazi or like some tyrann, like dictator, like those words just should bring an alarm to our mind just to check it out.
For sure.
Yeah. And actually, you just mentioned about pictures. Pictures, it's also the big part of manipulating, and we see in media currently was so many cases when people manipulated pictures online. They tried to say that there was a shadow or something, they edited it, they used pictures from other events and they attached it to current events, like and this is just something you just mentioned. You have to check those pictures for information, but practically how you will do that? How you will understand that it's a real picture?
It is a real problem for sure. And like if you take photographers that were taking live pictures at the events, during war crimes and even like, events like elections, for example, like 30 years ago, you had a film, you had a photographer that was on site taking pictures. So, if there was something physical that is very hard to manipulate, now everything is digitized, which made our lives easier. However, it also opened up a room for manipulation. And we have tools like Photoshop and we have AI that can basically change any picture. And like we've all used that, like, to make ourselves look better in photos. But, that seems like a very, minor case. However, in photojournalism, especially, like this, pictures are being misused all the time. And I had a few cases in my work where I have to, work with such events. And when I witness myself, especially right now in Europe, when we have an ongoing war conflict, how pictures from 30 to 40 years ago are being misused today to form an opinion and misrepresent facts.
From both sides of the conflict, it's the same pictures sometimes.
The same pictures, yes,
or even like they use mannequins. They say that like it's real people or something. It was in Russian media. Like recently, people used it on TV.
Yeah, there was a case I think when there were some war crimes committed as well, and even Russian propaganda were telling people that it's all fake. However, the photos that they used, they were all manipulated as well. So like, again, like it's really hard to protect yourself from that. But, you can still take some steps to double check visuals and any photos that are being published from the internet. Like for the first thing that you can do is definitely check the source where this photo is coming from. Like usually the more credible sources, the less possible that it's going to be manipulated. Like if you take photo banks from Reuters, for example, or even New York Times, I think these are considered, or Associated Press is like all very credible sources that have very strict fact-checking process, and it's almost impossible that they will use something that is manipulated. However, you can take a step further, and like if you see a picture, even in a credible source, like try simple tools as reverse image search on Google and see where else this photo appeared. And sometimes you can find that the same photo could have used, like, again, many years ago in a different context, or maybe it belongs to a different event, or, maybe there are versions of this photo that, have been manipulated. And like that would help you to classify whether this is something that you can trust or not.
Yeah. So you're actually working in the Web3 space, and
yes.
How that could help to uncover these issues and to create the trustable source for journalists and for regular people to rely on those pictures online?
Web3 space is fascinating, and it's like such a broad term that combines so many different technologies together. A lot of people think about blockchain, NFTs, different financial tools that, are being used in many different ways. However, I think the origin of Web3 is blockchain tech, and crypto, which we usually use in cryptocurrency as a word, but actually it stands for many different things. And modern cryptography is also part of Web3 space as well. And cryptography as a tool can help, in many cases, but especially for journalists, it can be super useful to protect photos and different photo evidence, as well as articles and different things from manipulation. And one of the projects I'm actually working with as a part of a Protocol Labs network is I'm just super proud to be representing them. But the name's Starling Lab, and this is a research and development lab as a part of Stanford. And they've been very focused on developing different tools to help journalists to, again, like protect people from manipulation and make sure that all the work that they're doing being preserved for generations. And this is a perfect use case of how modern cryptography and Web3 space can help reporters. And what they do, and one of the most recent use cases that we just published actually a week ago, it took like a year to publish this investigation that we've done into war crimes in Bosnia, actually, where we took all photos that were taken 30 years ago, and we made sure to preserve them for generations, the originals, and make sure that they cannot be manipulated. The way it works is actually very interesting. So today, if you're a reporter, you can simply download an app or install software in your camera, and when you take pictures, usually when you see like on the photo, there are certain metadata that is included in the photo. So you can see where the photo was taken, who took it, what camera they used, what time was it taken, etc. So all these things, they also can be manipulated. But what we do and what Starling Lab does, they make sure to create a cryptographic hash, or what they call fingerprint, to ensure that this data is being preserved and kept. And then it has
it goes to
yes, and then we upload it to decentralized web, which means that it's being spread by thousands of computers, a lot of services. So everyone who has a copy of it, and it's really hard to manipulate that because everyone
also has the original.
Exactly. So what happens next is that if you come across this photo in a Reuters article, for example, you can see this cryptographic hash or
Rolling
fingerprint.
Stone article about this.
Rolling Stone actually published a whole investigation about it. And if you go on their website, you can click on the photo and you can see the cryptographic hash, which is basically, a mathematic formula. And then if you run it, and if you, like, let's say you have a copy of the same photo on your computer. So, and if a single pixel was changed, and if you run this mathematic formula to compare, it wouldn't match, which means that the photo that you have, the copy that you have, was manipulated. Mm-hmm. So everyone can verify this, everyone can check it, but that's like the way how you not only authenticate the original, but also preserve it at the same time. So like it won't be taken down. No one can remove it from the internet anymore. And that's how you preserve very important evidence of war crimes that are happening every day, unfortunately. Yeah. And even in modern Ukraine right now, I think it's super important to preserve these things and make sure that no one can manipulate them. Because we want to make sure that people that are accountable for this, they actually get what they do. Yeah, they actually get what they deserve for the war crimes that they commit.
Yeah, it's an amazing project. It's just, I'm so excited that you shared about that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we started to talk about Web3 space. You joined Web3 space a while ago. Why? How this transition from political journalism to Web3 space happened with you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was. I wouldn't say it was an accident. I feel like everything happens for a reason, But yeah, it's been over 5 years now since I joined Web3 space, and I know you talked to some, Web3 veterans here as well.
It's true, Victoria Morgan.
Yes, and
Anastasia.
This space is like very interesting and fascinating. But I basically joined it because I was studying journalism and PR in school, and then at the time when I started practicing as a PR manager, Web3 space was emerging. It was back 2016 when we've had an explosion of different crypto and blockchain projects on the market, and they were looking for funds. They were trying to develop their projects and educate people on how they work and tell them everything about this new breakthrough in tech that they've created. And there was a need for someone who would tell the story and explain to people on
their language.
Yeah, in an easy way.
Yeah.
Yes. So and it just happened that when I started working as a PR professional, we've had a lot of different clients from this space, ranging from different AI projects that are using blockchain, financial projects, as well as some projects in gaming. So basically, every single industry was trying to implement some tools from blockchain space, and some of them succeeded, some of them are not.
Yeah.
But I've seen this all as a huge experiment, and I've always been a big believer in the tech. And even today, when some people are getting very skeptical, because there are definitely some bad actors in the space, some projects are failing, unfortunately. But I think that happens in every industry, and given like how new this all is, and it's like all very experimental, I think that's a part of the process, but I'm still a huge believer of what this tech can bring to the humanity.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that lots of challenges and opportunities I'm sure are coming in, and I would love to talk with you about that because you have such a unique perspective to that. So your project, which you're working right now, is, on my view, one of the real cases which we could use in our daily life. It's not only about currencies and exchanges. It's like a real study case, like how you can use the technology for the good of the people to save information. How maybe like you'll share some other projects you're working right now, or some projects which are existing and we even don't know that it's Web3.
Yeah.
It's just,
I mean, there are so many areas where blockchain and Web3 space can be applied and to be used today. Just like AI is surrounding us everywhere, from different apps on your phone to even like biometrics in the airport. Like it's
terrifying.
Yeah, it's basically part of our daily life, and a lot of people, they don't even recognize that blockchain has been implemented in some of this. Overall, I feel like besides starting lab, and also like a part of our network is another project called Filecoin, which is a decentralized storage that we're working on. And right now, when you have a file that you want to preserve, like you usually go to Google Drive or Amazon Web Service or like other Dropbox, like as an application. But there's an alternative to that we are using that helps preserve this file and share it across, like multiple computers and services.
So if something happens in this planet and we don't have internet,
yeah, I mean, like that's a real possibility. Like I wouldn't trust that Amazon would exist in 100 years. Maybe it will, maybe it will not. But like, people will exist and computers will. So like, I trust that more than big corporations.
It means that right now there are centralized information centers where this information is stored, like Google and other companies. But your project is focused on decentralizing this information. So
correct.
You have a little piece of that. It's not like only one company owns your data, but it's multiple computers.
That's right. And then again, like if you look at different websites, they're taken down regularly for many different reasons. Like maybe someone forgot to pay for a server, or maybe it was shut down for some information that wasn't supposed to be there. Or someone just like stopped working on this, like and like there were, I think when we all were young, we had this like different blogs on on the internet. Like I had one. I mean, like there are many websites
today, actually.
and then and if you check back now on everything that you published even like 10 years ago, you probably lost about 80% of this information forever. And again, you probably cannot access because some of these companies, they don't exist anymore. So again, like we come back to the same story of the importance of preserving this information and making sure that next generations can also see that and access it. And some of this can be really critical to to the humanity.
Some archives.
Yes.
About wars and.
Exactly. Yes.
Events.
Or, stories of people that went through genocide or different things like that. I feel like that's extremely important to keep memory of that and
social
preserve it.
injustice and other current issues.
Yes, and we actually preserved a lot of archives about Black Lives Matter movement. That was super important for us to,
There's a long history of that.
Yes, and as well as different elections, and to make sure that milestone in our history
It's a
is
work
also
in
preserved.
technology.
Yes, and it's being used today by journalists, by different lawyers as well, and you can find many use cases of that, and probably you don't know about it yet, but it's definitely part of our daily life.
Yeah, that's amazing. It sounds like very difficult, but as a PR manager, you describe it in such an easy way. So
try my best.
Yeah, it's actually amazing because even me, like I'm new in the space, I'm trying to figure out, and it's actually amazing. Do you use storytelling to tell your stories, to bring this difficult information to people, to make them interested in technology itself? Which techniques do you use for that?
Yeah, storytelling is actually very powerful tool to tell any story basically, and that's like telling the story itself. But I always think that what interests people the most is the people behind the tech, not the tech itself, right? And every time I talk to reporters as well, they always ask me like, who's the person behind this tech? How they came up with this idea, what's been on their mind, and what's the story that brought them to this point. What were the milestones and that went into this, and telling the story from the human interest perspective has been the most powerful tool that I've used, and I think it's probably the most powerful tool that people can access to, and make it honest and sincere. So things that you say are something that others can relate to, even if it's a story about how you failed or something that you maybe wish went a little differently. Like, it's always better to be honest about that, and I think that touches people a lot, and they can relate to it better because they can see that you're a real human as well, not some sort of AI.
Yeah, do you have some examples? How do you use this storytelling tool in your tech Web3 space when you pitched journalists and when you created that?
Yeah, I think, I always love, like, when I start working on the project, ask founder about their personal story, and even, like simple questions like, their day-to-day and what goes into it and how they manage the company. And from that, I basically interview them myself. And then from that, a lot of really interesting stories emerge. One of the most recent examples, I think that COVID has been, something that everyone
Yes.
can relate to, because we've all been, struggling through that. And that has been, an event that touched everyone, not like many people, but everyone in the world. And I've had a lot of founders that I work with that had to change their life and adapt to the circumstances, just like, again, everyone as well. And one of the examples that I think has been really successful about one of the founders who had to travel to Sri Lanka during COVID to see his family. And unfortunately, the country shut down because of the COVID. So he had no post office, no Ubers, supermarkets were shut down. Like, basically the whole country just,
Closed off.
Yeah.
That's it.
And of course, like, not even, no planes, nothing. So, and he had to still continue working and manage his company.
Some Web3 project.
Yes. And the company was based in LA. Like, so all his team was in LA, and it's like about 13-hour difference. And he had to, basically reverse his day to manage this. And that has been a real struggle for him. And then one of the reporters that I work with was looking for stories like that, like how people manage companies during that time, like what change goes into that. And, that was a perfect fit. I reached out and I told her the story about the founder, and she interviewed him for the podcast. And that has been an hour-long conversation. And, again, like, the reason why they were interested in that is because it's, something that is so close to everyone and something that everyone has been going through. So people can relate to it. And then that was also a hook to tell about the project as well, and, what they do. So that has been pretty successful story overall.
Actually, I know you also was working on anti-crisis PR for companies. So
Yeah.
today, like as I mentioned, media can work in many ways and influence people, and we see the cancel culture is a big issue right now. So because without any official courts, people form their opinion about things, and it influences the careers of people and people's life. How do you work on that? Do you have some experience?
Yes, I mean, thankfully, I don't have experience with cancel culture specifically, but I would definitely have a lot of experience working with crisis PR, and in different cases, like from data leaks to founders' personal stories to when some documents were leaked, etc. And I had to manage reputation for several companies and several founders, and that's definitely a very stressful task, but also very interesting because you work with something like so sensitive, and when you're talking about reputation, it's something that is extremely hard to manage, but very easy to damage at the same time. And yeah.
What will be advice or some advice here to prevent that? What happened with the company, with the brand, with the owner? It's really hard to be in focus all the time. If someone will make a picture of you or something will happen, you don't have sometimes the control over that. But if you would advise to...
I mean, honestly, it's impossible. So, and cancel culture is definitely a concerning event and just trend that is happening. The internet itself has always been a space for freedom of speech. And unfortunately, right now it turned the other way around where, people can judge you for whatever you say and for whatever opinion you make. So, unfortunately, like no one is protected from being canceled, and it's really hard to, manage everything online to ensure that people, don't cancel you for that or don't form your opinion about that. But what I would say is that, I guess the first step that you can take is probably consider what information is out there about you, right? Like even if you do a simple Google search about yourself, like what is out there, like any mentions, any like commentaries on social networks, like any photos that can be potentially taken not in a right way. I would definitely consider that as an option of removing them, or maybe thinking of like what can be the consequences of having this online. So like just a simple audit of what's out there is probably the first step.
Number one, yeah.
Yes, and then of course, like it's really hard to like, and you shouldn't like live the life of like not posting anything online or always being afraid of that someone will cancel you. That's just like not living at all, right? We all have the the right to express ourselves, and I would say like when that happens, like make sure that you have a professional that can advise you on your reputation management.
Yeah.
But also, consider speaking up for yourself and, telling the truth, because again, like we have the right to have an opinion. We have the right to do certain things. So like if something happened, be honest about that and explain, the set of events and the reasoning for that. And if something that happened is not appropriate or, can be considered as dangerous, explain what steps are you going to take to fix this issue and be honest about it. So like, these are like crisis communications 101. Honesty is always the key in everything. So
it's actually a big trend right now in social media as well. Like people want to see real you. There's not so many photoshops. Exactly.
Because we have so much misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. And like everything is perfect. Everything can be manipulated. So like people are thirsty for the truth and the real you, right? So like, filters, all that. Like I feel like that's becoming an anti-trend these days.
That's actually a positive thing.
I think so too. Yes, because we can be ourselves finally, which is a good thing.
Exactly. And this is somehow cross topic is about your personal values and business values when you work as PR manager.
Yeah.
It's like being a devil advocate or like protecting something what is valuable for you. How do you deal with that? Like, I know some people, they have specifically different business values and personal values. Some business creators, they merge those values and it works perfectly for them, perfectly for other group of people. How would you categorize yourself? Is it professional values, business values, and personal are different or the same?
Yeah, I think, my personal values always align with my clients, right? And I think I've been fortunate enough to have great clients, but also, on all the agencies and even now when I work in-house. But before that, we've done very thorough research into companies before we start working with them. And I think that's the very first step when you can decide whether this is something that you want to pursue and if this is the company that actually aligns with what you believe in or not. And I think that's very important overall in PR because you cannot tell the story in an honest and authentic way if you don't believe in it yourself. So I would say, like, before even started working with the company, ask yourself those questions, whether this is something you believe in and you can convince your grandma that this is the next
Big thing.
next big thing. Yes. And, if they believe you, then you're probably doing a great job of explaining that. But yes, so, and I've always believed in my clients and, the mission, the tech that they're building and their personal values as well. And, of course, there were some instances when, I disagree with them or, some situations when I thought, they were not doing the right thing. But that's, I guess, working with NPR is being like a therapist or a doctor. Like, you trust people that you work with, and that's also like how you build meaningful relationship with your client and achieve the best results. So, no matter what happens, I will protect my clients and, try to manage their reputation in the best way possible.
Wow, yeah, that's great. You actually mentioned that you've been working in agency, now you work in house.
Yep.
And just basically you moved to New York City from Russia. How
Yeah.
your experience working there and here is different? What would you mention?
Yeah, it was a dramatic change for me for sure. And when I was in Russia and then I started traveling a lot, I've always worked with English speaking media, and that has been my core focus for years. But not being here in New York and in the United States overall, and working from outside of the country with English speaking media has been very challenging. And I think a lot of people think that they can just use, different PR tools or specific language to pitch reporters.
In the US,
yes.
Working from abroad.
Yeah, and that will be successful. However, without being a part of culture here, without, being in the context of different events and even like learning how people communicate here with each other. And I think that's something that prevents a lot of people from succeeding because they can't relate to things that are happening here.
Is there any specific unwritten rules working in a corporate here with your colleagues, with the journalists?
Yeah, I think, every company, every corporation has their own rules. And it really depends on, the size of the company, the industry that they work at. And for example, the tech industry overall is like way more relaxed than, finance, for example, or even like institutions or like legal, like, of course, like every industry you take, they will have different set of rules and ethics and stuff. And
fashion is different.
Yeah, of course. Fashion is a completely different story. I feel like right now it's blended a little bit since most people work from home still in the United States. And, a lot of these things, you just like don't see it online as much, but when I used to go to the office every day, you would come and I think that was it was extremely challenging for me in the first couple of months because I would come to the office, I would hear my colleagues speaking, and I realized that there were a lot of like cultural references that I wouldn't get. Like they would talk about some, baseball game or like a movie that they watched like when they were kids, and I didn't have the same cultural background, so I couldn't understand the jokes, the references, like all these different things. And even when it came to the current events, like it was really hard for me to grasp like what are they talking about, because for them it's just like so natural, like like talking about like some Soviet comedies like we all watched during New Year's. like all this like little things. And then over time, you build this context, you build the cultural background for yourself. So like a lot of things that you can relate to, and like you start making these jokes yourself. But yeah, it's been a challenge, and at the same time, a great opportunity for me, because when I moved here, I became a part of all of that. So now I can definitely relate to everything that people are saying.
Yeah, it's amazing. Any differences communicating with journalists from like New York City, journalists living in Boston or West Coast? Is there any ethics which you should?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all the same.
No, it's definitely not the same, and people are different for sure. And the United States is a great country, but it's also huge, and a lot of people don't realize that people that live on the West Coast and people who live in the East Coast, they have different mentality, different cultural backgrounds. They eat different food, they go to different places, and like all these things, they definitely affect the way they communicate. And if you look at reporters in Boston or like like mostly, I would say like Boston is just a great example because they tend to be more strict. And I remember I had a client in Boston, and we've tried to get into the Boston Globe for forever. And that was a client that was building like a breakthrough Web3 tech. But the journalists there, they tend to be so conservative, and they're not open to any new innovation at all. So like it's really hard for them not only to, understand this, but also like they have to really make an effort to sit down with you and listen, because they tend to, write about the things that they know, and they're not open about to learning a lot of new things. Not everyone, but that tends to be the hardest region for me personally to work at.
Yeah. New England.
New England, yeah. And then, reporters from New York are always busy, like always busy. And like they can, listen to you during the interview, you can drink coffee, they can text at the same time. And you're like, are you even listening to me? But they do. They do. They just multitasking, and it's like they're always rushing somewhere, but they tend to do things really quick. And like when you look at the speed, how they write articles and how they communicate, how they like always on the go, but it happens really fast. So like when you work with reporters in New York, like you have to adapt to the speed as well. Like if a reporter asking you for something, like for the time to schedule an interview or send him something, like you have to do it like this because that's how they move. So you have to move quickly as well. And, if you take West Coast, it's just also a completely different story. Like, I think in New York, we always joke, like if you go to a LA coffee shop, like people tend to have like a 15-minute conversation while ordering coffee.
Which coffee specifically?
Yeah, which milk and like how are kids and stuff. So like same with reporters that are more open to talking to you and like learning about new things. But I think people on the West Coast are even more open to international startups. So if you decide to enter the US market, I would definitely start with, San Francisco Bay Area, just because they're so used to having so many immigrants and so many startups coming into Silicon Valley to build their new project. So it's very common for, someone from San Francisco Bay Area to talk to people from Asia or Europe or other countries as well. And they're more open to that versus if you take, I don't know, Florida people, they will probably write about something that is based in Florida and something that is more local and that they can, go to or relate to, something that is a part of their local community.
Yeah, it looks amazing. Actually, is there any books or podcasts you would recommend to someone who would love working in such a dynamic industry and staying motivated, staying up to date? Is there something maybe personal, your favorite personal books, or something will be useful to listen to those who are in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, for a PR professional, it's extremely important to be up to date with news overall. So I feel like the moment when I start reading the news on a daily basis has become, a breakthrough moment for me for my career, because I've been up to date with everything that's happening. So
every day you schedule some time?
Yes, I actually do. So like my day starts usually like around 8 a.m. I would block my time like about 45 minutes just to read the news, and it has become like my daily meditation. But yes, I schedule some time for that, and I make sure to go for like all the top headlines in the media. And like the way I structure this for myself, like I love newsletters. That's probably the best way to get the news delivered straight to your inbox, and you don't have to search for
any specific media outlets you would prefer?
Yeah, I would say, for PR professional, like take the top outlets in your industry. So if you work in tech, make sure to read like TechCrunch and Fortunes and Of the World and The Verge. If you work in business, there would be a different set of outlets. I just read Business Insider. Again, Fortune is a great one. I personally love Bloomberg coverage. I think they're great. It's probably one of the best and most diverse outlets that exist
in the US.
Yeah, and I actually that's probably the only outlet where I get the print version as well. So I know a lot of people don't read print anymore, but I love Bloomberg print, and I actually do read print quite often. Also, I get Wall Street Journal in print and New York Times in print.
We did the Economist.
I used to do that, not anymore. Yes,
yeah, don't do it anymore. But
yeah, but I think that's also like a little bit maybe a controversial advice that I give to a lot of younger PR professionals. Get the print, just because it's just so hard to find the information online these days. It's just so much, and when you try to place a story in a specific outlet, like a lot of clients come to us and they say, oh, like I want to get a feature in New York Times or Wall Street Journal. Like if you have a specific target, get the print version of it, and that way you can see clearly like who writes about the topics that you have, like, or your client has, who are the reporters, like what goes on the front page, what goes in the middle page, so you can specify the targets better. And like
then online,
yes, because there's so many stories, like it's really hard to find like the specific one that you need. And I've had a lot of success just by using this approach, especially in print, because like you read a story and you're like, oh, like this reporter wrote a feature that he can probably be the one interested in my story as well, and he can write a feature too.
Yeah, so this is how you pitch journalists.
I do, yes. Yes.
That's amazing. Yes, so some advice to someone who wants to start the career in PR and to be as successful as you are, what will be that?
Oh, wow. Stay curious, I guess, and try to learn as much as you can. Again, make sure to follow all the media that you dream of to get coverage at. Again, like I've always dreamed about Wall Street Journal. It took me 6 months to get a story there since, I started working on something, but I was reading this every day, like 8 a.m. in the morning. I go on my inbox, I see Wall Street Journal newsletter, and I'm like, okay, so this is something that, I need to pay attention to, but also dedicate time to like stay on top of. But also, I always say, be honest. I feel like it's just like such an important value for everyone in this world. But I hear a lot of reporters always complaining about PR people, again, manipulating things and like sharing disinformation with them or something that is not accurate with the effort to hype up their clients or hype up the news. And I feel like these things, especially when you're a professional reporter, you develop this mindset to understand when someone is telling you something that is not quite true or accurate or like definitely hyped up. So be authentic and stay honest. And sometimes you can find a great story in simple events, like someone went for a walk and something happened, and things like that. I feel like simple things like being able to see a story in that, I feel like that's a skill that every PR professional should develop.
Yeah, to pick up highlight something
and make it a story.
Make it a story, yeah.
And also be able to fill this in the context of current events as well.
Yeah, it's an amazing skill.
Yeah.
My last question.
Go for it.
For today. So, what is the definition of success for you?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say, enjoying what you do, and every day when you go to work and you realize that what you do is actually brings you happiness, I think that's when you understand that you made it. And I think PR has been, the second kind of love for me, but I've always been true to it. I feel like that's just something that really fits my personality a lot, and I do sincerely believe that it brings value to people, because through PR they can understand and learn more about, you know, breakthrough in tech or beyond, and you know, this is something that is changing their lives today or will change in the future. So for me, like, I'm truly enjoying what I do, and when you find your passion, and if you know, do it every day, like, I feel like that's when you understand that this is it. You made it.
So much. It's amazing. We had such a great conversation. I hope maybe next time or another time we could speak with you more about such interesting projects and things you're working. Maybe you will work in the future as well.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Happy to.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you so much for watching us. Actually, here will be some contacts how we can find you. Someone who wants to reach you out for some PR advice or maybe something, some email.
Yeah, reach me out on Anastasia at protocol.ai.
All
That's the best content.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much.
And have a nice day. See you next time.